Hello and welcome to Fire in the Belly. Today we have myself, Mighty Pete, and we're joined by Padma Ali. Good afternoon, or good morning, I should say, for you.
Yes. Good morning.
Thank you very much for coming on. It's lovely to meet you. So, Padma, tell me, who are you, what are you doing, where are you from?
Thank you so much for having me here, Pete. I was very, very intrigued by your podcast for sure when my friend Annie told me about your podcast. So thank you so much for having me. And I am a coach. I have a very interesting background. I'm a psychotherapist by profession, and then I decided I don't want to do that anymore. And then I just decided to do coaching full time. I basically help evolved overachievers find their highest potential. That's the that's the top end version of what I do, the boring part of what I what it sounds like, but there's more that I do with my clients. So, but mostly evolved overachievers.
So, overachievers, put that into context for us.
So they're mostly leaders, they're mostly people in the industry who are thought leaders and change makers. Those are the people who tend to come to me, and they have a sense of there's a spiritual connection, or it's in the background. They might have not accessed it entirely, but it's there. And those are the people who tend to come to me.
Oh, that's cool. Would you describe yourself as a high achiever?
Oh yes, I would say I used to be a high achiever. I no longer subscribe to that terminology.
Okay, give us the new version then.
So high achievers to me, it's like people who are driven to work really, really hard and feel like working hard is going to get them to get the results that they want. I think that's the norm that most people subscribe to. And I think that you can do so much more by accessing other aspects of more than the 3D world that we live in. And it doesn't come from hard work, because if just hard work were to get you to where you wanted to be, anyone listening, or even including me, I would have gotten there, right? But most of the growth in my career and personal life has happened beyond the 3D level. So I think if I explain a little bit more, it might make more sense. In my work, both what I do with my clients and on myself, I combine neuropsychology, which is my background, energy healing. So I tend to be more on the esoteric, on the metaphysical. I include that in my work, and also tapping into wisdom. And that wisdom, you can only tap into wisdom when there's clarity, when you're not caught up in all the 3D beliefs about I can't do this is not possible, I can't have what I want, or subscribing to rules and norms that society places on you. Now, I'm not saying anybody go and do something outside the rules, but what I'm saying is we just do things without questioning. And where I come in is saying, okay, is this working for you? Why are you subscribing to those rules? Who said you can't get married, whatever, or like you can't have a baby in your 40s? Like, who said these things? Like random things that people tend to subscribe to.
Sure. And when you say beliefs, just I suppose for anyone listening, really, how would you explain beliefs?
Beliefs are, to me, they're very subconscious. And the way I often describe it is it's like, the moment you're born, it's literally like someone opened up your brain and it's like dumping their thoughts and feelings and their beliefs about the world into your brain. And then you grow up thinking certain things. Like, some of the common beliefs is like, oh, if you don't, like I come from the Indian culture, so this was a common belief when I was growing up, like you have to get married. I'm also 44, so the things have changed by now, like they're changing, or they may have changed, or they are changing. Like you have to get, ways you won't get, you can't be a mother after, or like I had my children when I was 38 and 41, and I was already labeled as advanced maternal age.
We call them geriatrics here. That's what my wife is called. It's like, that sounds nice.
Yeah.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah. So I've always been a rule breaker. Like that's the best way I can describe it. I don't look like it, but I broke a lot of rules. even including having my children. I don't know why I'm talking about my family life, but whatever, right? So I had my children both at home. I had a home birth, which was unthinkable. I live in the middle of a city. Right? It's not something anybody would even think about doing, but it's what called out to me, and I was like, nope, I'm doing this. I want to have my children in peace. I don't want intervention. There are hospitals close by. If I need help, I will go. But I'm not subscribing to what is expected of me to do.
It's interesting. This is subscription, rule breaking, not following trend, things like that. Where's this all coming from?
That's interesting because I used to be a very big rule follower throughout my childhood and my teen. Maybe all the rule breaking was just for the family, just to create some, I was a younger child and I had to do some ripple effects. My parents, I couldn't let my parents my sister was the rule follower, right? And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to create some drama in the house. But I think in my 20s, I followed rules. Probably till my 20s. I was a high achiever. I had like 2 masters by the time I was 22. I had my license as a marriage and family therapist by the time I was 24, like really like very, very high achieving. And then the universe decided that, hey, dude, you're not listening. All right, I'm going to throw a curveball at you. Are you ready? So that's when I got very, very sick with an autoimmune disorder. And I was sick for a very long time. And that makes you pause. You can't do the things that was expected of you just because you did them all along. And that's when all the rule breaking, that's when I started questioning, I would say, are these rules working for me? What am I doing here? Why am I here? What's my true purpose? What brought me to this? I've chosen this life. That's my belief, again, by the way, that I've chosen my own life. I've chosen the path that I'm on long before I came into this form called Padma. I don't know if that sounds kind of out there, but
No, and we can go there, believe me. It's like choose the size of the rabbit hole you want to go down, choosing your path, that's quite interesting. So explain that to me a bit more if you can.
so I'm of the belief that before we take on our form, whatever form we take on in this lifetime, like before we're born, we have some kind of contract that we make, like saying, okay, I'm going to choose this family, I'm going to be born here, and this is my life path so that I can fulfill my dharma, my true purpose. It's all an evolution. At least that's how I believe, like it's an evolutionary path. And I'm choosing this lifetime to evolve to a particular level. And then when my contract is done, I'm going to leave this body and go on, and I'm going to choose another body to come back into and continue in the path of evolution. So life and death is almost seamless. It just kind of goes in and out. It's like, all right, I'm done with this house. I'm going to go buy a new house.
I had a great expression someone used a couple of interviews ago, and they were saying, we're all souls in a meat suit.
Yes.
Which I thought that just explained it perfectly. And it's like going, yeah, how does your meat suit look? It's like going, yeah, it's a wee bit chubby, but we'll get there, but your soul is outside of that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
cool.
and most of us identify only with this form, right? Like I identify with this form called Padma. I identify with this. I'm a wife. I'm a mother. I'm a coach. It's just we keep it at such a superficial identification, but our purpose is beyond that. Like my purpose, at least that's what I think it is to evolve myself and help other people evolve to their highest consciousness, to their highest potential, so they can create the changes that they are here to do.
What, and that's interesting. So who are you?
Well, that's a very good question. I was about to say goddess, but I'm that's the free flow of consciousness. That's what I'm here. Like I've had visions of channeling Kali. You know who Kali is?
No.
Kali is the goddess. She's a goddess. She almost looks, if you just Google Kali, you will see a picture. It's Kali. She's standing with sounds it's going to sound really funny, but she has skeleton. She has skulls as a garland. She's wearing skulls as a garland. She has someone's head on her hand, and she's standing with a big sword in her hand with like blood dripping out of it. So I know it sounds so violent, but Kali to me represents both forms, like the divine feminine and the divine masculine. She kind of embodies both at the same time. The softness of the divine feminine and the divine masculine, which is needed to create, to make things happen. This is so funny because I've never shared this, and I'm sure you've heard this term before. Like, I'm like, I've never shared this before.
It's that I get that a lot. So I love it when you go down the rabbit hole. It's like, yeah, I've got a spade here. Let's go dig. So I mean, I don't know whether it's a Western thing, is whether we consider the conscious to be male, the subconscious to be female, and does that come into play? So it's the transaction between the male and the female's conscious subconscious.
Not really. So the divine, every one of us has the divine masculine and divine feminine in us.
Okay.
And when it is out of balance is when we are out of whack. So which means that you have the divine feminine in you, even though you have the form of a man. And I have the divine masculine in me, even though I'm female on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
And the divine feminine, I mean, if you just think about, like, that's why they have like the mother earth and father sun. Does that make sense? Like that's why they call it that way. That's why they've given genders in that sense, or the ancient civilizations gave those kind of genders, because to create change, you need this blend of both. The divine feminine is what creates. It's the creator, but the masculine is what helps to make the change happen, the action takers.
I have actually just Googled Kali as the goddess. So just to explain to listeners there, it is a 10-armed, 10-legged, blue jewel-wearing lady with swords and weapons in one hand and gifts and bows, and I think I'm probably butchering it, but that's kind of the explanation as I see it.
Yes.
That's awesome. It's like, so yeah, I mean, there's so much. And talk to me a bit about the divine female, divine male. What roles do they fill each?
I think they're vital for creation in general. I think without that, creation cannot happen. Like, if you just think about a male and female, just think about like just the 3D form, right? Like you need a male and a female in order to have a baby. So thinking even from that place. So when we have the divine and feminine, divine masculine and feminine in us, it allows us to create and take that creation into fruition, make it happen. And and when it is out of balance, which means that if you find yourself giving too much, right, that means your divine feminine, your divine masculine is wounded, is what they call it. Now, this is not a subject I'm very familiar with. I just know the basics of it. And what a wounding means is that when you give too much, you're giving because you are seeking love and affection. You want to be loved and you want to feel loved. And then it creates an imbalance in your system. Because if you're not receiving, how will you give? Your cup is empty. There's nothing more to give.
There's an expression I particularly like, is saying that your void is your value, and that's people will fly the flag for something that actually they need in themselves.
Right.
Which
you nailed it.
It's trying to see, but also then you take the ego into effect as well, and you take all these layers and trying to go through. There's two terms you've picked up, you've mentioned there, which I'd like to follow up on if you don't mind. One is 3D. Talk to us about that.
3D is the place that you and I live in right now. We're talking via computer, like we can see each other. Like this is just the 3D form that you and I have. Like, people around us, we can see their human form, but there's more to it. There's more than just the physical form. We're all conscious beings walking around, we're energy beings walking around, but we can't really see that. Like we're so focused on just our physical form, and it's not wrong or right. I mean, I have a 3-year-old, right? And the 3-year-old, I mean, everything is filtered out from her 3-year-old perspective. And she has to do that in order to live in this world. I mean, this is there's a car, like identifying these things, like this is how we are programmed to be in order to survive in this planet called Earth. But it's more than that. It's it's that energy. It's like seeing each other's energetic imprints beyond the 3D level.
Do you see energy?
I do. I feel it more than I see it, but
Okay.
I feel it.
Can you describe to us in some way?
So when I talk to somebody, I can almost feel. I almost know. I know who was. I was talking to somebody the other day. I just met this person, and I was even. I was. It was not even like I'd gone with my sister somewhere, and I met this person, and like I just could sense things about that person that. And then my sister was like, she was more like her friend, and she was like, "What? How did you know this?" I was like, "I don't know. I just sense it." So it's more like an inner feeling. It's my intuition, I would say.
Mm. No, that's awesome. And listen, I'll look forward to learning more about that because, I mean, here we talk about people sometimes that are mood hoovers. I don't know if you, it's like you meet them and you're like going, oh, I'm not speaking to them again. And maybe they've sucked all the energy out of me and like, yeah, we'll walk on. So, no, it's before we get totally into it and we've sort of gone off the deep end straight away, but that's cool. Tell me, what does fire in the belly mean to you?
Oh, fire in the belly to me means being able to access who you truly are, again, beyond what I call myself on the 3D world. Like, what am I here for? Like, what is my true purpose? And when I can access that true purpose and live in alignment, everything opens up in the most spectacular ways.
I think alignment in itself is a very interesting aspect, and how do you view that?
Alignment is a very big word, right? Like it's thrown around a lot,
Mm,
and I I I I think it's sometimes hard to know what your whether you're aligned with your highest purpose or your true purpose is. It's hard to know that on an intellectual level, but it's something that you feel on the inside. It's just a feeling. It's like, no, I will do this. I will do this till I'm ready to leave this planet. And that's how I feel about this work and what I'm doing here. Like I will do it till the end of my time here.
it's so interesting. I mean, you know, you mentioned 22, which happens to be half of your current life, and um, you know, it appears that you followed a very academic path to that point.
Yeah.
You've had a bit of a an event, let's say, and that you're not really following an academic path now, or are you?
Oh, yes. I have this deep sense of acquiring knowledge. Like,
Hmm.
so I've continued acquiring knowledge, but not in the traditional sense. Like I've continued having coaches and I keep learning. I'm in a year-long program. Like I still continue to do that,
Hmm.
but it is not in the traditional academic way. Like I've not gone on to get a PhD and like, double PhDs and stuff like that. I would have gone down that road had it not been for this event that was like basically brought me to my hands and knees. My awakening journey, I would say, began then.
Well, take us right back then, Padma. Where were you from originally? Talk to us about your family and, you know, sort of mini Padma. You know, who are we looking at?
So I was born in India. I grew up with my parents and my sister, and we had pretty meager means to living. We lived, with my grandparents, very traditional, very, very, very traditional Indian household. And I'm using this very deliberately. My parents come from the Brahmin cult, the Brahmin caste or whatever that is, like the highest priest caste. I don't subscribe to any of that, and you'll know why. I mean, I'll share more of that. But that was the background I grew up in. Very, my parents. I would say they were very simple people, very simple. Like they just wanted to do good in the world and take care. They took care of my father took care of his parents, and was a dutiful oldest son, like all those very traditional norms that they grew up with. That's what I grew up with. Um, and I rebelled from day one. None of those things ever made any sense to me.
She says with a big smile on her face. It's like, yeah, chief mischief maker.
Yeah, I mean, I just didn't understand. I grew up with so much, looking at so much. I mean, we were lower middle class,
Hmm.
and I grew up seeing so much poverty around me. I was an empath even back then. I couldn't understand what was happening. It would just bother me, like seeing all those things, and I would just feel people's pain and didn't know what to do with it. So it would just create a lot of unrest. I think it created a lot of unrest within. I didn't know what it was. Like there were little kids who would come to clean our home, or, like that's just how it is, how the culture is based. And it would bother me so much. I would go and help them out. I would like do things with them. I was probably at their age, right? Like, but it just was like, how can these people be treated differently? Just didn't make any sense to me. So it started back then, I would say. And I think until the age of 10 or 11, I was pretty, I would say pretty happy and, like easy going. But when the teenage years hit, it was rough, 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 very rough. I couldn't I didn't fit the social norms. I couldn't understand what was happening. I wanted to rebel, but I couldn't rebel. A lot of confusion. I'm sure, it's a common story for a lot of teenagers. And I just didn't know what to do with myself for most of the time. Because again, like, I obviously wasn't living in alignment back then. I didn't know what alignment was. I didn't know anything. Like nothing had started, but it just didn't feel right. So the first opportunity, I left home. I came to the United States, and I was like, I'm doing my master's, and so I came here, and that's how it all began, because I was like, I'm not doing this. And then I met my husband. So we've been married 21 years at this point, but I met my husband right away, and he comes from a very different religious background. We neither of us subscribe to any religion, but comes from a different religious background. And I was like, total rebellion again, and I married him. Much much, that's why I mentioned the cast, because it's it was again like breaking so many social rules unconsciously.
Are you now where you're supposed to be?
Yes, now I am.
Okay.
Took me a long time.
And that's a journey because I'm curious there. You talk about through your teenage years being out of alignment.
Yes,
Did you have any sense of where you should or could have been through that?
more accepting and loving of myself, I guess.
Hmm.
There's a lot of self-critical criticism, and I wanted to achieve more, but I couldn't figure out how to do that. I was just ridden with a lot of anxiety, like so much anxiety back then. I mean, I would say I lived most of my life with anxiety back then.
Where was that coming from?
um Many different places. One, because of an empath I picked up. Also, do you know anything about human design?
Not a whole lot.
Okay, so human design is, it's like an astrological something. I don't even know how to describe it, but my human design is a projector. So projectors just make up like I think 16 or 17% of the population, and they generally tend to be seers and guides. The best way to put it, like more, they would be the village elder, like if you can call it that, in the olden days. So being that, that is one of my gifts too. I can sense a lot. I can just feel people, and I didn't know how to filter that out. So I was just picking up anxiety, like societal anxiety, and then my family anxiety, and that was part of it. And not knowing what to do with it, like sitting in my body, it just turned into my own anxiety because it was being filtered through my physical form. But it's an interesting question you ask, because not many people ask that. Because most people just assume that, oh, you're an anxious person, but you're like, where did that come from? That's very interesting that you asked that.
It's, I suppose, I mean, my own path. I mean, I've had sort of bouts of depression in my past, and a bit of a revelation for me was, depression and a lot of things, anxiety and things like that, and even, sort of more common habits, alcoholism, addiction, things like that. They're generally symptoms, not causes.
Yes.
And I think if you go with that basis, that actually we don't, as humans, we don't tend to inflict pain on ourselves without intent, without reason. But like that is typically a reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's,
Yeah.
as I mean, so you're happy-go-lucky, easy going. You're getting to the teenage years. What what are you looking to do? I mean, what was young Padma? What was her ideas and goals for life?
So even though I was happy-go-lucky, I was still very anxious child. I
Mm.
remember being probably 4 years old or 5 years old, waking up with anxiety about some stupid schoolwork. I was odd. Like, how does, oh, and this is the funniest thing. At 5 years old, I still remember like wanting to die, saying, I don't belong here. Like, I don't want to be alive. This doesn't make any sense to me. But, again, like I have a 7 year old, right? I have a 6 year old. So I can see it, right? Like I can see, like, he's not thinking about those things. But I'm like, wow, you thought about that? Like, it made sense to you to like think about dying? Like in my own, obviously now when I look back and I remember this so clearly. I had there's something, it was a little container. It had slightly like, sharpish edges, and I would like hold it tight, like in thinking like if I held it tight enough, I would die. And I would keep holding it. It was like, that's not happening. Obviously, I didn't talk about it, but now when I think back, I'm like, that is really interesting. But it almost like now when I look back, the I often joke with my closest friends. I was like, I think I just got dropped off in this wrong planet. Like I wasn't meant to be here. At least that was the sense I used to have back then. I was like, this is the wrong house. Like I don't belong here. I need to go back home. This is not what I want to do. Now it makes sense why I'm here, but back then it didn't. For the longest time, that was my biggest thing. I'm like, I don't know why I'm on this planet. Like nothing around me makes sense. And you can see me, right? Like I look very normal. It's not like I'm like, I'm not like, not odd or have whatever. But
You don't
it's
have 5 arms or 10 arms and legs. I can confirm that for the listeners. We're okay there.
right. But oftentimes like, this is not home. I don't know what the heck am I doing here. So even though it was like happy-go-lucky 10 years of my life, it was still ridden with these things. It was already starting. I think that's my awakening process. Like I just knew it.
Hmm.
And this is also interesting. I don't talk about this too much, but at 10 years old, I picked up this book called The Autobiography of a Yogi. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I started reading it. A 10-year-old, right? Like, I don't think it made any sense to me, but I was like, I can't put this book down. I have to read this. And then my mom told me that she read this book when she was pregnant with me. And so there was lots of things in that book that was like, I know this stuff. I know the story. And I mean, that's what I was putting it all together back later on. Again, it's all piecing things, information back together. But I couldn't put that book down for the longest time. I didn't finish it. It was too much for a 10-year-old to, everything still had to come through the 10-year-old, right? Like I don't think I could comprehend that. And then one thing that always made me feel at home was animals. I loved animals. I would just bring random stray cats, dogs, birds, like just pick them up and bring them home and try to take care of them. But that's what really, I think, kept me grounded in some ways. And I wanted to be a veterinarian. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a vet. But again, like social norms, like, oh, girls don't, are, it's not good for them to be vets because, it was like back then it was, if you were a vet, you would have to go and live in a village and take care of cows and cattle. And like, that wasn't the life my parents were wanting me to have at that time. So they're like, no. So this is the funniest story. So then I was like, all right, if I can't be a vet, I'm going to learn how to talk to animals. So so I was like, oh, animal psychology. That sounds really interesting. Maybe I'll study animal psychology and learn how to talk to animals. So I joined after high school. I was like, I'm going to join it. I'm going to learn psychology so that I can communicate with animals. And then I found out that animal psychology was basically talking to humans. That's what they were referring to. Animal psychology was basically human psychology, but that's the term that they had used. But whatever. So that's how I got into the psychology field. And I was like, okay, this is not too bad. I can talk to people and help them out. That's fine. I can do this.
Part of getting into psychology was that like to almost answer your own questions?
Yes, 100%. I often joke about this, but therapists are some of the most screwed up people I ever know. Yes, yes, it was definitely to understand my own self and learn about healing and understanding my own inner psyche. And then I realized therapy does not work because it just keeps people stuck in their stories, so much of their stories, and then they just hang on to their stories. And then I was like, I'm done with it. I don't think this is going to work. I need to find a different way to help people, not just by doing talk therapy.
Do you know what you were seeking as a 10-year-old?
I think I was seeking freedom, awakening, or I don't think freedom and awakening go hand in hand, but yes, freedom. Awakening is not freedom. It is, but it isn't. It's a pretty rough path.
Hmm. Freedom from what exactly?
I think all that pain and suffering that I was experiencing, but also as a collective, like I often feel like I'm picking up on collective energy.
I was going to say, was it your pain and suffering, or was it from? And do you know the origin?
Like that being an empath, like seeing, feeling my family, and then the external, like I could see so much poverty just from my house. Like that's just how we live,
Right.
right? Like it's just
Hmm.
everything is so visible,
Okay.
and the pain and suffering. India is different now, but when I was growing up, the differences were very,
Hmm.
very stark. It's hard to avoid that.
Because you're coming across. I mean, I suppose your two senses there, your visual and your kinesthetic, are sort of seem to be fairly heavily prioritized.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah. I'm a visual processor. You caught on very
Hmm.
quickly.
Well, it's interesting because you know you are seeing it, but then you see the empath side, so it is interesting. So animal whisperer, except they're humans. Vet was not appropriate. So were you? I mean, were you being guided at that point, or was this? Were you able to sort of? Were you processing for yourself?
I I think there was guidance from the outside. I just didn't take it. I'm pretty internally motivated. Like I don't, if someone tells me what to do, I probably will not do it. So even though there might have been guidance from the outside, I probably did it all by myself. Like I just decided I'm going to do this or do that. And interestingly, my life has always been this way. Like the door that has to open is often the only door that's open. Like I didn't get into anything else. Like when I finished high school, even though I had good grades or whatever, I didn't get into any other program other than psychology. So I was like, all right, I guess I'm meant to do this. But that's how my life has always been. It's almost like, okay, all doors closed and there'll be one door that's open and I just have to walk through it. There's no other choice.
Hmm. I'm almost offset by your energy. It's weird. I was just questioning myself there. It's like the strength of your vision and stuff like that. I'm finding it slightly disempowering, but that's
Tell me
uh,
more.
no, it's just interesting because I suppose um, and I think it's probably right back even to what you were saying. I mean, in terms of your goddess and your misalignment. Because I was trying to work out, is it like a parts conflict that was coming through your childhood? And I've hearing different people are saying there's almost like two souls in one body, and until that gets aligned, you lose it. But it's not coming across like that. It's almost like a mismatch until you sort of settled into yourself,
Yeah.
soul, body, who you were, what you were, and all the rest. And there was conflict until that sort of came 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 to rest as such. I don't know if that
Mhm.
makes any sense.
It does. It does. I mean, like until I would say until like a few years ago, there was just this is what I was saying. Like when there's so much internal conflict, right? It's hard to access who you truly are.
Hmm.
Now, it's not like I am the goddess Kali, but I channel information from the divine feminine. Like that's what comes through me oftentimes. But for that to happen, you have to let go of so much stuff. You have to let go of all this, and I don't think I've let go of it entirely, to be honest. Like I don't think it's completely shed from my system, the survival stuff, and they come up like even this morning, like it just comes up. It's almost like habitual at this point. Like I'll wake up with anxiety and I'll be like, why am I anxious? What is this about? I have
Hmm.
nothing to be anxious about. And then it's a conscious process of letting it go. So that's what I'm saying. Like you have to become an open channel. these things have to shed. And this whole journey until now has been about shedding. It's about letting go of one onion peel at a time.
Hmm. Where, I mean, what's your instinct of where you're at in that process?
I have ways to go. I don't think I'm there yet. Um, and even like when I talk about the past, right, it feels more like I'm looking at a movie and there's no attachment whatsoever to the past. It's really interesting. Like I have no nostalgia. It's not like I want to go back and revisit these like the places or like even the happy memories. It's more like, oh, that happened. That's so interesting. It's just it's so far removed.
In school, what were your natural go-to subjects for schooling?
That's funny you asked that. Because of my anxiety, I could not retain a lot of information. So I don't even remember what my favorite subjects were. Like I can't remember because it's so riddled with anxiety. And the Indian schooling system is very, at least when I was growing up, there was a lot of corporal punishment. So I was just scared to go to school half the times. And then when I went, I couldn't retain any information. So to date, like if you ask me to define calculus or algebra, I'd be like, I don't think I can do it for you because it's like just, like my mind has grasped the concept. I can't describe it. I don't know.
But I mean, would you, in the sort of the more empath type subjects, language, communication, feeling, drama, things like that, was it different there?
Yeah, it was different. I don't think I was even exposed to any of the art stuff. Um, I know I did not like math and science. I just did not. It's so I don't know. I don't know
Hmm.
what I was good at or what I liked even. I don't think I even asked myself that question. It was more like just get through this, get to the next level. It was so unconsciously driven, the entire thing.
Hmm. Do you have an interest in history?
No,
Hmm.
sometimes I do. I mean, like, there's certain subjects, there's certain topics that might be of interest to me, but I don't, it doesn't pull me in.
Hmm.
I'm more interested in metaphysical, if that's what you're asking. I love metaphysics. Just I'm crazy about it. Like anything metaphysical, I'd be like, time sign me up.
So just explain that for our listeners and probably a bit for myself as well.
So metaphysical is anything out of the ordinary, like anything that, like like being able to see and being able to experience and like having these what are called as non-ordinary reality experiences. Um, and like this may sound weird to some of your listeners, but like I get information from birds and animals. Like, if I see a hawk, it has a certain message for me. Animal medicine really calls out to me. Like, that's what I mean by metaphysical. Nothing is random.
I thought this a while ago. No, I was going to wait a while, but I'm just going to bring it up. Do you believe you've been an animal in the past life?
I probably have been. I've been many things. This is not my first lifetime, but yeah,
Do you
eons.
are you conscious of what you were in past lives and things like that? Do you,
No,
no.
no, not. I mean, I might have some flashes here and there,
Hmm.
but not really, not entirely.
So, and in terms then, you would, what sort of animals typically would you sort of get messages or connections from?
So you might find this. I found this. You can even find this on Amazon. This an animal medicine card deck. So I have my 9 animal uh, totems that are mine that guide me through my
Hmm.
process. And one of them is turkey vulture. And I guess like the last couple of days ago, I saw tons of turkey vultures in the sky that just like randomly just appeared. Like I'll just go away and somebody one more will follow me. And so to me, like they were giving me some message. So I had to go look up what does turkey vulture do and what is the communication for me, what specifically I was thinking about, what do I need to do. I'm not yet proficient in interpreting information like that, but it's part of how I operate in the world.
Okay, you can't leave us hanging here. What does a turkey vulture do?
The turkey vultures, so interestingly, are the animal, the medicine. You can just look it up. You can even just Google it. You'll find information. It basically, it allows you to go between life and death. So if you look at just a turkey vulture, right, their job is to, they're scavengers.
Okay.
They feed on the dead. So it's something about going between dimensions easily.
Well, makes sense.
You're like, what did I sign myself up for?
I love it. It's just like I do say to people, it's like, listen, the conversation goes where it goes. It's like going, yeah, this is cool. I'm loving this. It's just trying to, oh, it's awesome. Sort of, my mind is just blowing up as we speak, which is cool. What are some of the other animals on the cards?
So some of my favorite ones, or at least the ones that call out to me, are hawks.
Mm-hmm.
Um, was it bison? No, not bison. Elk. Elk medicine. Had a few more. So recently, like, I've been seeing a lot of snake medicine. So when I say seeing, so this is what I mean by that. So I will literally see a snake, but I'm not going to see it. I'm not seeing it in real life. I'm not like seeing a snake crawling around. And in fact, snakes really scare me. But I keep seeing snakes. So to me, snake medicine is like calling out to me. So I will invite that medicine to come in when I'm asking for information about my next steps, or what am I here to do more of, or how do I reach more people. So I'll invite in my animal guides to come in. The other one that just came to me recently was hummingbird. Hummingbirds are all about being joyful, being in the present, being now, here and now. So when I asked a question saying, okay, what I have big visions of reaching, helping as many people awaken to their true self. Because the more we awaken, right, the more we can live a life of freedom. So I asked, like, what is going to help me reach more people? And I pulled out this card. So what that told me was, when I can be in a state of joy and being in the present moment, it will just bring people to me that I need to serve.
Makes sense. So it's the gift of giving, really, is it?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it may be coincidental. I mean, a lot of the animals you mentioned there are all wing based. They're all air based.
Ah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's so true. I didn't put the two and two together.
I mean, fair enough. I don't think elks can fly, but
It
the
does, it
rest,
does.
yeah. If you see an elk flying, we've got trouble. Uh, so, take us right back, though. Hold on, because I mean, you, at what point did you go from India then to America?
When I was 21, I think, when I
Okay,
came here to do my master's, my second master's.
okay. So go back a little bit then. So you've just got over teenagerhood. You got through all that. What were you studying? What was your sort of focus at that time?
Psychology. I got into a psychology
Okay.
undergrad program, and I was just studying that. I was so riddled with anxiety, and like I didn't know what I was doing, just didn't feel good, just did not feel good. Had tons of panic attacks back then. Like, just life did not feel good. Um, and and then I did my master. I somehow did. I don't know how I kept studying through all of that stuff. I have no idea how I got through all of that. And I did my master's back again in psychology, in clinical psychology, and then I was like, I can't work with. So the clinical psychology there is like working with people in, like, who are severely mentally disabled, like schizophrenics, and like I just could not do that. I was My nervous system was getting shot because it would just pick up all their energy, and I didn't know what to do with it. So I was like, done with that. I can't do this.
That just sounds like asking an alcoholic to be a bartender. It's just like going, this is not going to go well.
Right. Yeah. So I was like, all right, let me apply to some master's program in counseling psychology, which seems a little bit more milder, and I picked marriage and family therapy as my what's that called?
Major? Oh,
Yeah, as a major. Yeah. So I did that. I came to San Francisco, and it wasn't great. I was so excited to be to be out of India. I just didn't fit in, like, in, like everything I thought of and I believed in just didn't fit the norms there. And so I was like, I don't know why I was being dropped off on this side of the planet, but I'm glad to be out of there. And I came to America, and I started my program then. But even then, I was like, there's still anxiety. My parents wanted me to have an arranged marriage by then. I was 21. They were like, just get married. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And that's when I met my husband. And he's Muslim and was Hindu. And we were like, you know what, let's just date. Let's just have fun. Who cares where it goes? And then a year later, my parents were like, you have to get married. And I was like, all right, fine. You want to get me to get married? I'll get married to this Muslim guy. Now what are you going to say? Oh, my poor parents. But once they met him, they were like, all right, I don't think this is the exact words of you. I think you have to marry him, because I don't think anybody else is going to marry you and stay married to you.
It kind of smacks of, for God's sake, just get it over and done with, because you're like the liability.
Yeah. They're like, that's a black sheep. I don't think anybody would want to marry you at this point. You might as well just get married to somebody. So, but that's how that was the beginning of my next chapter. So all the angst with my parents was gone by then, but I was still like struggling with anxiety, like so much anxiety even back then. Like, just I didn't even know what I was anxious about. There was nothing to be anxious about, but it was just this high level of anxiety on the background.
How much do you think the, sort of the expectation, the Indian culture, the, family expectations, all the rest, do you think that was a weight as well? I mean, was that a catalyst for you, or do you think it was deeper?
I think it was deeper. I think there was always anxiety, and then these were the avenues it chose to come out in the form of. Or maybe I was naming it as anxiety. I don't even know what it was, but it was just this little underlying unrest. But if you think about it, right, like anytime there is discomfort, that's when we want to do something about it. So maybe that was the universe's way of saying, hey, get up, wake up, dude, just wake up. No more, stop sleeping. Like, it's not time to wake up. I think it was a nudge from the universe, but it was finding channels through all these different mediums.
It's hard, yeah, I suppose it's hard to know what to do with it at that age. It's, especially if there's expectations or unknown and all. Tell me, was your sister normal?
Yeah, she still is.
Just
Very.
checking.
Yeah. I mean, she's
Older or younger? Is she older than you or younger?
She's older. She's 4
Older.
years older. Yeah.
Wow. You guys close?
Yeah, now we are. The teenage years, I think it was just normal sibling stuff. But at this point, yeah, we're very close. In fact, awesome. It's so funny because a couple of years ago, she was like, I want you to coach me. And I thought she was joking. I literally fell off my chair. I was like, whatever, like, I can give you referrals. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And she's like, no, I want you to coach me. I know you can help me. And I literally was like, I thought she was joking. For 5 minutes, we were going back and forth. I thought she was bantering with me. She was teasing me. She was just like because I was always such an anomaly in the family. And she's like, no, you're the only person I know who can help me because you know my history really well. And the results were like amazing, but I'd never expected that she would ever want this from me, that our relationship would change so much that this is what would come out of it.
That's awesome, because I mean, normally people say just, family or friends, if they need any help, just send them down the road somewhere. Just don't bring them into your house. Don't sort of keep them close.
Yeah, that's what I thought. She's like, nope, you're the only person. So we made a big contract saying, nope, I'm your coach. I'm not your sister. In these times, for the next 3 months, I'm not your sister. And it worked out really well, actually. It did. I don't know if I would do that. I've been asking my husband if he wants me to coach him, and he's like, nope. He's like, absolutely not.
Yes. Oh, I love it. I love it in so many things. So your second master's, sorry, it was the marriage and family.
Hmm.
Um,
Therapy, yeah.
did you need it, or was that something you
No, that
just
was,
wanted?
I just wanted to pursue that. I mean, I don't know, there's something about counseling that felt a little bit better. So I didn't work just with marriage. I didn't work just with couples. I also did individual work, but that was
Hmm.
a degree title that the state issued.
And my question is, did you need the therapy yourself?
Therapy, yes. Oh, I've been in therapy tons. Personally, yes. And as a couple, yeah, we've been through our own ups and downs, and that's I can tell you that story too. But like it's amazing right now. But when you're not in a good place, it has to affect your relationship. There's no way it won't affect your relationship.
Hmm.
And it did, yeah.
That makes sense too. I mean, listen, we all have ups and downs and the stress and the strains of current life, and especially if you're feeling out of alignment yourself,
Yeah.
it's hard. It's
Yeah.
like people, it's like in school or somewhere else, they just say, just why don't you just work harder? It's like, oh, I'm sorry. Why don't I just do that? Yeah, thanks. That's really unhelpful.
Yeah.
So tell me, so really you got into that to this point, you're married, so you got over that hurdle. We're there, we're good. You've gone right through. What's happening then?
Then I got very sick. That's what happened. I got an autoimmune disorder, which was probably always there, and that it just opened up. At that time, my husband was having his own health crisis, like I'm not going to go into that, but like that, I think triggered my autoimmune. Basically, it was like again, like it's the button that just got pushed. It was always
Hmm.
probably there, and it was a gut related autoimmune, and we all know the gut brain connection. So my brain was like I was on fire with the anxiety, and so and every time we feel anxious we often feel in our belly, right? So that started the whole being sick. And I was very, very sick, like for 5+ years, and most of the time I was bedridden. I could not even walk. I had to have like blood transfusions because I was losing so much blood. And it was like and even this is the funniest thing. When I say I was an overachiever, I used to work through that. I went to work. I had my own private practice. I had a thriving practice, and I still showed up for my clients. I was like, what the heck was I thinking? I don't know. I guess I wasn't thinking. I tell this story a lot. Like it's really funny and it's not funny at the same time. I was in between clients. I get this call from my doctor, my naturopathic doctor, because even back then would see the off the beaten path practitioners, and he's like, these were these were kind of his words. He's like, get your ass to the hospital right now because you need blood, and I can't understand how you're still walking or talking because you should be dead by now with the amount of blood loss that you have. So I got myself to the hospital, and they gave me like I think 3 or 4 bags of blood. And but it was really, but this is the, I laugh about this because if the universe had not done that, got me sick, I don't think I would be where I am. It's one of the best blessings I've had. I've had to let go of so much attachment to all the things that we are attached to. Like I was a vegetarian. I grew up vegetarian, and I loved animals, right? Like, and so I didn't want to do any harm to animals. But at that time, the only thing that my body could tolerate was animal protein, animal meat. Look at that, right? Like you to talk about the universe like hitting you with a 2x4 saying, dude, you're attached to being a vegetarian. Is that your identity? Here, I'm going to take that away from you right now. And now what are you going to do? I had to let go of so many things. I had to let go of, all my friends around me were having kids and like living in, like the White House with the picket fence and like all, none of that could be my life because I was either sick or I was just like could not even move. So letting go of so much attachment to identity started back then. It could not have happened if I didn't get sick.
Do you think it was manifested?
Oh yes, 100%.
Just checking.
Yeah, I don't think I would have stopped.
Hmm.
I mean, part of it is manifested, part of it is probably karmic, like shedding of layers and who knows what else. But through that came so much knowledge and awareness about holistic living, spirituality, meditation. All my energy healing started back then, learning about energy healing, learning to heal myself, learning to trust, learning to surrender. All of those things came from that. And I don't think I probably would have done that anyways at some point, but it would have not been such an accelerated process.
It's interesting because I mean, I suppose you've carried stresses and strains and sort of lack of identity almost through the teenage years. You've achieved great things in university, and you've or the yeah, sort of studies in university and all the rest, and then you've, as you say, you're ready to sort of get up and go, and you've got your practice and everything running, and then university's come slammed you down and going, no, we need to have a word.
Yeah.
Um, but again, it's sort of, it's not for lack of trying, but you sort of almost sort of keep finding yourself, certainly overachieving in some ways, but just again out of alignment, just keeps coming back up again.
Yeah. Yeah. Out of alignment and attachment to control.
Mm.
It was such a, I would say, I think at this point I've recovered control freak, but I was so controlling of my life coming from fear, right? Of like trying to hang on to something that made sense and nothing made sense.
Fear of what?
Fear of, I think it's survival. It's very primal survival stuff.
Mm.
Very, like I'm not scared of dying. Like that's not my, like most people are like, oh, fear of death. And like, that's like the biggest fear, right? Ultimately you take it back there. I think for me, it's like this fear of living out of alignment, living this, living my life without purpose. But I don't think I think that's like the deep layer, but on the surface, it's more like fear. It's primal survival fear. Like, what's going to happen? Like, am I going to have enough? Am I going to be able to live comfortably? Like, am I going to be just caught up in all the basic needs? I didn't grow up with very much, so there was still that attachment to like having enough to make sure that I'm comfortable.
Mm. That makes sense. Yeah, it's comfortable and free. Yeah. No, it's you talked about sort of healing yourself and stuff like that. Talk to us a little bit about that.
So it was a process. I tried many different healing stuff, like even with Western medicine, I was on a lot of drugs, so many drugs at some point, from steroids to like, God knows what. But nothing helped. Nothing didn't do diddly squat. It didn't do anything. I had to let go of that and then find alternate medicine like homeopathy, acupuncture, tried many different Chinese herbs. But it was a process. Like everything took me to another level, and then I would get sick again. Another level, I would get sick again because here's like you picked it up right away. It was this manifestation. I was attached to the identity of also being sick. It gave me some kind of a safety net as well, unconsciously. Until I let go of the identity as a sick person, it didn't change. That continued for so many years. For 5 years, it was this way.
How was that serving you though?
It was, I think, kept me stuck in my place.
Okay.
It just, was like it didn't serve me on a conscious level, but on an unconscious level was like, okay, I can stay stuck. I don't have to own my true powers, right? I don't have to step into my own power.
Mm.
Because stepping into my own power was scary. I wasn't ready. I was still attached to what would people think about me, like, how am I going to be judged? And if I speak out about what I'm here to do, like it would just not, there was still a lot of fear around being ostracized and
Mm.
You asked about a past life, right? Like that's one past life I can remember where I was ostracized, was living in the outskirts of a village as a destitute, like really having nothing, just rags. And so that's still like a vivid memory.
Why were
And I
you
was a healer.
ostracized?
I was a healer. And that,
Right.
and
Okay.
then, and then not some of my healing powers were threatening to the community or whatever. And so I was ostracized. So it's too scary to own my own powers in this lifetime.
Mm. I can see why, and sort of, yeah, traditional thinking would struggle. Let's just put it that way. Struggle to know how to label it or what to do with it. No, that's so. What happened? How did you sort of come to process it?
So at some point, I remember this very clearly. I was lying in bed and then I was having a talk with the divine and saying, if this is the life you have for me, I'm okay with it. Because I was fighting it till then. I was fighting and fighting and fighting. And I was like, if you have chosen me to be sick and not do anything in the world and not be productive in air quotes, then I'm okay with it. And it was a big, it was a something just opened up in my heart and my chest at that point, and I let go. I completely surrendered to the process of the divine. It still took years, took a few more years for me to fully be better, but it opened up more doors for me of like other practitioners coming in, someone who could help me with this and finding the right practitioner, finding the right what my system needed for me to start getting better. But that was like the turning point. I just let go. I was like, all right, this is what I'm supposed to do. Fine. I'm only 26 years old, but fine. That's okay.
How was your business reflected and through this time?
Oh, it was very meager. Like I had a private practice. I've never worked for anybody. I've only had a private practice. It was like just a few clients that I could see. It was more, I think, my way of saying, okay, I'm fine, right? It was my way of declaring that I'm okay. I
Mm.
still have work to do. So it was very base. I had a few clients that I could see. I don't know why they were coming to me at that point. I really honestly don't know, because I don't know if I was fully even present. How could you be? I was in so much pain all the time. I don't know. But they still stuck on. It's interesting. One of my clients from back then that was like, what, I don't know, 15, 16, 17 years ago, just reached out to me now after so many years, somehow found me. Like even my domain name is not the same anymore, but I don't know how she found me. She found me. So I guess it gave me some purpose to continue on, but it didn't start blossoming until recently because I still wasn't in alignment. Therapy was is not my place. This therapy is not what I was meant to do.
Mm.
But it kept me going. And then it was at that point I started to get better, and then our marriage crashed. Of course, right? Saw that coming.
Spinning plates is like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I had to, because I was not the same person. He was not the same. I mean, like when you have to be a caretaker for somebody for so many years,
Mm.
I mean, how can I don't I mean, he was more like a parent for me at that point rather than a partner. Of course, right? I mean, how else could you get through something so hard? And then our marriage crashed, and I was like, I can't be in this. It was not his choice, it was my choice. I was like, I can't do this. So we split for a year, and we worked on ourselves in that time, and we were almost like saying, all right, I think we're done. Maybe we're meant to be with each other only for the short amount of time. But we were doggy parents at that point, and we didn't have children back then, so our dogs were our custody. So we were like exchanging dogs, and at some point we were like, why are we doing this again? Like, remind me. But by that time, really, we had worked so much our own selves. We never went, we tried marriage counseling once. It didn't work for us because the work we needed to do was ourselves. So once we did that, it's like rock solid at this point.
That time, do you see that as a period of, was it a period of growth or a period of healing, or what was sort of pain or pleasure is my point really?
Um, I would say mostly pain, growing through pain, but it was growth and healing at the same time.
That's powerful. I mean,
Yeah.
to do that, and I can understand the fact that, while separate, but actually having that breathing space to be able to compute. I mean, there's a slight irony that you were saying about marriage counseling, and really, suppose, given your second master's, is kind of, cobbler's kids. I don't know if you've heard of that term, but cobbler's kids don't get shod. They don't get their own shoes. So,
It's true. It's
any
true.
any any particular reason why you weren't good at marriage counseling?
I don't think it was, I think for many reasons. One is, even now, I maintain that to do proper marriage counseling, you need a really, really sound therapist.
Right.
Because it, when you have two people, I mean, you can only see one person's viewpoint, like, and it's very easy to identify. First of all, we didn't put in any effort to find the right person to work with us. And secondly, I think our work was more internal. It was not our marriage that was a problem. It was more like I had to come to terms with who I was becoming, and he had to do his own work on himself. I mean, why would we talk about it pretty openly. I mean, like, why would anyone in their right frame of mind take care of somebody for 5 years without any expectations? Like, why would anybody do that, right? That says a lot about him. He's very loyal, and but he used to put his own needs in the back burner. And this allowed him to say, no, I have my own needs, and it's okay for me to ask for my needs. And that was the turning point for him. He had to do that work. He was always a caretaker, and this was an opportunity for him to say, I don't want to be a caretaker anymore. Doesn't work. It's very powerful, very, very powerful.
It certainly sounds it, in terms of, almost marking an end to. I spoke to someone there and they had ME, and but actually they were saying that retrospectively they think, because it was over like a 3-year period, they think they had ME for like 12 months, and the rest was almost muscle memory. As in, it's just they continue because that's what they did, and psychologically, and they were manifesting it back on themselves. And I'm just wondering, was there something almost there when your husband was saying, right, that's enough for me, and and it all sort of psychologically coming back together again?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I definitely. I mean, we were so used to being also with each other. Like, we had to like be. This was a good break, allowing us to reset
Hmm.
in some ways, because then I was no longer the sick person he had to take care of, right?
Hmm.
And so it changed everything from that place of like him owning what he wanted in his life, and for me to be like, okay, this is who I'm turning out to be. So can we start a new life together? I don't know. So the chances were it was as good as dating someone new. That's how it felt. Like we
Hmm.
were almost like two different new people coming together rather than. And now it's like really amazing. I can't even. We just celebrated our 21st wedding anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it was really good because we didn't have kids. Most people stay together for kids. We had no
Hmm.
reason to get back together. And so it was really very powerful that we could do this work and come on the other side.
It's coming across. I mean, it seems to be a very useful process, or something you've gone through, whereby to sort of drop all the baggage, reassess, and then decide on your position. That sort of cathartic process. I don't know, does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we're very different people. He's an engineer. He's a computer scientist. So he thinks very differently. And yeah, I mean, like we're two different, very, very, we think very differently. I mean, even now he makes fun of all my animal totems. And he's like, hey, look, your hawk medicine, hawk guy is coming to give you a message. What is he telling you? I mean, he makes fun of me,
Hmm.
but it doesn't bother us. Like, he knows that this is my path, and I know that he's doing his own thing, and that's fine.
Hmm.
He's very spiritual, but he's more like a closeted spiritual person than an outwardly spiritual person.
No, I think, and what's coming across there is, no matter what, it's respect.
Yeah.
And it's respect for each other, and whatever paths and passions they may follow.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. So take us on then. I mean, what's been happening since then?
So I think one of the biggest strengths of our relationship and even of us, like we don't shy away from change. So when back then we were in San Francisco, and then at that point we decided to just say, as we got back together, we just decided to leave San Francisco and come to Boston. That's how we landed up in Boston, because this is where he found a job as well. He also got laid off at that time. It was like an interesting time. For like first 10 years of our life, we were like, how are we doing this? I don't understand. But this was the only job he found too. So this is what I was saying. Like when doors close, it's almost like this one door that opens and we either take it or we don't. And that's what we did. We landed up here. And even then, after we got here, I did have a couple more bouts of getting sick till I let go of the identity completely of not being a sick person anymore. Now, it's not, I mean, it doesn't even faze me anymore. I know I'm never going to get sick like that. I just know it. And then we decided to have kids. Actually, no, I take that back. You want an interesting story?
Go for it. I mean, I'm loving it.
So we both decided we actually don't want kids, because we were done being caretakers of each other between both our health crises. I was like, well, I don't see a need to have kids and to take care of anybody. So that was our agenda. And then somewhere I was like around 35 and I felt 36. And I felt this presence of a being. And I was like, what is that? And it felt like, okay, this being wanted to come through us, through us. And I was like, I don't want kids. I just don't want kids. So I was like, you know what, this must be my biological clock. Let's put it aside. So for 2 years, we just ignored it and ignored it and ignored it. And when I was around 37 and a half, I had this brilliant idea that, you know what, I was sick, you were sick. So because of his illness, one of the side effects of whatever he had, like the doctors told us that he probably could not have kids. And so at that point, the doctors told us to store his sperms just in case we wanted to have kids. It was like, 20 years ago. When we moved to Boston, we were like, forget that. Let's just get rid of those sperms sitting around. They're doing nothing. We're not going to have kids. Let's get rid of it. So we got rid of it. So there was no backup plan either. So on 37 and a half, I was like, you know what? Let's just try once, just once. You can see. Between both of our illnesses, I don't think we're going to we can't get pregnant. It's not that easy. Everybody has such a hard time getting pregnant. It's not going to happen. I don't know what made him buy into that story, because it was a damn good story. Here's my son. First try. I'm pretty careful telling this story because some I know can trigger some women who've been trying for years and years. And here it is. 2 years I sat with that. I could feel that being's presence for so long. And I was like, nope. I would even have conversations with that being saying, not happening. I do not want a child.
When you say being, can you explain that to me?
It's a presence. I feel beings all the time around me. I mean, if I tune in, I can feel presence of this is the other dimension.
Spiritual beings.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was a presence of somebody.
And was it figureless? I mean, could you put a form on it at all, or was it just a sense?
It was just a sense. I would just feel it all, like literally. I even joke. I mean, I joke around with him. Like, I don't think he gets it, but I'm like, you were following me. He was literally like, I would feel this being like constantly around me all the time. But it would show up as like, I want to have a baby. I want to have a baby. And then I would be this inner dialogue saying, no, we decided we're not doing that. I don't want a child. I don't want to be taking care of anybody. I'm going to suck as a mother anyways. Like, these were my inner dialogue. So who wants to do this? And then there it was.
Love it.
And I felt my daughter when I was birthing my son.
Right?
Yep. I felt her. And then I was like, nope, we're done. So my closest friends joke like, are you sure there's no more beings chasing you anymore? Like, no more, done.
Yeah, it's like you give away twice, but that's it.
That's it.
Yeah, It's when you take more radical steps and going, seriously, no, that's, yeah. Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, her story is also really cool, like really, really cool. So we were not planning. We were like said no more, right? Of course, you know the story before, and we were like not even trying this time, like not even trying. And we were supposed to go to Germany for vacation with, you know, we were just taking a family vacation to Germany. So we get to the airport. For some odd reason, my passport says it was going to expire in 3 months. And suddenly, like 2 days ago, Germany had a rule, or Europe had a rule, saying that if it was going to expire within 3 months, you can't go. This was a new rule that they made up. So we went back home. And it wasn't even, you know, like, you know, I keep pretty good, I'm very good with my cycles. I keep track of things, and it was not anywhere close to my cycle. Nothing of like, you know, being of ovulating or any such thing. And the same birth control we've used for 17 years. I remember that night, I was like, this is so strange. And then, but that's how it was. That's where she came from. I was like, you made us miss the flight. Because we could get on a flight the next day. I mean, we got the passport expedited and whatever. Like it worked out, but it had to happen that night. So she made us miss the flight. I was like, you are, and she's so feisty. Goodness. Even now, as a 3-year-old, ooh, she's so feisty.
Oh, do you recognize her?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I do. I
Do
do.
you get a sense or presence around both your kids? I mean, do you get a sense or you know, because I know obviously there's a connection of mother and child anyway, but
I
I'm wondering
do.
just a greater sense.
Yeah, she is a healer. I just know it. It's just a sense I get of her. She's, should see her. She is tiny. She's a small 3-year-old, but her personality is like humongous. When she was born, she had a very hard time. And the messages I was getting was that it's too much. Her spirit is unable to fit into this body. The meat sack was very difficult for her. So it took a while for her to help her transition to being fully in this body. It was had to do a lot of work with her to say it's okay, it's safe, it's okay to be here.
That's awesome, I mean, especially considering your journey. To, I mean, to for you to recognize that and to, I suppose, give her safe passage, you know,
Yeah,
and everything you've been through.
yeah,
Um, yeah, to be able
yeah.
to recognize that.
Yeah, it's interesting also because when I was pregnant with my son, I'm also, I know I do a lot of energy healing. So I used to work on him energetically a lot. Um, and he's a very such a good kid. I mean, it's such a sweetheart, such a kind, beautiful soul. And his transition to the being here has been pretty easy, I would say. And with her, I could not touch her in utero. I could not do any energy work on her. Like I could not get to her with a with a 7-foot pole. Like she would not let me touch her because she has her own path, and I have to. This is. I think of myself more as their stewards rather than their mother. I feel like I'm here to make sure that their path is open so that they can do the things that they're doing.
Mm, wow. Just, I mean, in terms of religion, spirituality, obviously the spirituality is quite a big picture for you guys. The religious side, is that all put to the side?
Oh yeah, nothing religious.
Hmm. That makes
Yeah,
sense.
religion feels so dogmatic and it feels so restrictive. I mean, if you think about it, the core of all religions speak the same language, and if people really understood that, right, there would be no more wars. I don't know. It's just crazy what people are doing to themselves and to the planet.
It does, and I suppose again, for I'm lucky to meet so many people and talk about that, and you realize that spirituality is in one level and sort of religion is kind of that's like step one, whereas you know, again, but it depends on different beliefs and perceptions and things like that, you know, so I try and be respectful to everyone, you know, but I know for me, just seeing, and there's so many things you hear and see that you can't unsee and unhear,
Yeah.
which is awesome, you know. What's goals, ambitions for you? Where are you going?
You know, I was thinking about that just yesterday. It's funny you asked that question just yesterday. I'm like, where am I going with all this? What am I here to, again, how I know my purpose, but I don't know what my next steps are. Right now, I just do one-on-one work and I do like some very, very small groups. But my goal is to reach a lot of people,
Mm.
to help them really see themselves. Like it's almost like I want to remove the veil that holds them back. Like there's like this veil between who they truly are and who they are right now. And that's I often have visions of like standing in front of thousands and thousands of people. And I mean, it might be just energetic, like reaching so many people, but I'm not sure how that's going to manifest or how that needs to come through. Um, there's a book called Change Me Prayers by Tosha Silver. I just came across it recently, but it's one of my favorite. It's like a beautiful book. And in that, she has this amazing prayer that I've just taken to. It says something like, you know my gifts, you know my talents, you know I'm here to serve. If this is the right step for me, just show me the next step. So powerful, right? Like when you can just surrender to the divine plan and just let the divine guide. My human 3D self sometimes gets in the way, gets impatient because I know what I'm here to do and I want to do it now. But I also know this, I'm also in charge of these two beings and I need to be there for them right now.
No, it's awesome. There's actually a book, "Dying to Be Me" by Anita
Oh,
Morjani.
yeah.
Oh, that sort of blew my
I
mind.
haven't read
Only
that book. It's on my reading list. Is it good?
it's I well, I'm a listener by nature. Just like say with, you know, I never read for leisure or pleasure, but listening to her and listening to her voice and her telling the story. Um, to give people an example, I mean, it's a lot of it's about near death experiences, which is and it's similar to what you've described here a lot in terms of letting go. There's
Mm.
so much letting go in that, and it's a powerful listen, read, whatever your preferred method to learn is. Um, yeah, I would strongly recommend it. I think, well, for me, it meant a lot, and it was interesting. You know, so it's
I'll look it up. It's been on my list.
mm, no, it's amazing the different things. What would you say then? I mean, why overachievers? You know, because that's kind of where we started. What made that stand out for you?
I think that's a very good question, you know, but I think overachievers, I can relate to them and they can relate to me in some ways. And overachievers are also really ready to make changes in some ways because they couldn't get to where they are if they were scared of change. And it's easier to work with people when they are ready to jump in and do the work. And that's what I've seen with overachievers too. Like they're ready, like they know, and they'll do everything to get to that place of being in their alignment when they're ready to do the work.
Give me your perfect sort of avatar then. Who's the person that you can help the most?
So usually they tend to be more like, you know, directors and CEOs and more on the top tier of them.
Male, female? Do you have a
I have both. They both seem to. I thought I was working primarily with women, but I've had a few male clients reach out and they're like they want to do the work. The they tend to be very um, they use unconsciously use metaphysics to get to where they are.
hmm,
Some of them are not conscious about it. Some of them are, and to me, that's always in the background, like for them. That's why I call
hmm.
them evolved overachievers. They are evolved. They are evolved, and they may be conscious of it. They may not be conscious of it. But when I talk to them about these things, it's not like, "What are you talking about? What have you smoked?" Nobody says that to me. They just know that they know this inner language. They know the soul language when I start speaking about these things, or when I take them on a journey. Like usually, my work is also some of it is talking, but a lot of it is inner work. So I have them go on a journey with me. Like I have them close their eyes and I take them on an inner journey, and they just do it. They're not, because they understand this language on a deep level, and they are change makers. They generally are. They create a lot of change. And I think there's a reason why the divine has put that in my path, because when you change leaders, you change everything, right? You can change. It's like, you change one person, it trickles down. And I often
Absolutely.
think about that, like, the impact.
Makes a lot of sense. I was taking slight exception to the sort of the term overachiever. I mean, it's a bit like people saying 120, 110%. Well, I don't know, the mathematical side was saying there's no such thing.
Right.
And, overachievers suggest that they're sort of overworked or over something. And I
Yeah.
don't know what
Yeah.
your take on that is.
I just came up with that term, honestly. it,
Not
it,
to
it,
pick on your
it
term, sorry. It was just.
it's what fit those people, because fit
Mm.
my clients, because they do too much.
Ah, yes, that makes sense.
They overwork, they work so much,
Mm.
but that's what they're programmed to do. And what I'm teaching them to do is saying, take a step back, just
Mm.
let the universe work for you. When you're in alignment, it will not feel like work. Like ride the wave, rather than trying to create the wave and then making a surfboard and then trying to get on the surfboard. Like, don't have to do all those things. When you're in alignment, you just have to get on the wave and it'll take you.
Mm. So as in engineering terms, you used to talk, it's like you're input based as opposed to output based.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they tend to be overly hardworking, and their cups are generally empty. By the time they come to me, most of them are like drained. They're like, I don't know what on earth I'm doing. One of the common terms that they use is like, I don't know who I am. Right? And that's what tells me, like, okay, you're ready to do this work, because you want to find you. Because ultimately that's what it is, right? When you find yourself, then you can do anything. Nothing holds you back.
I think my fear of almost doing a lot of that work would be that you'd pack up your life and change everything. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah,
I had
which
a
is
client say no to me for that very reason. Exactly that. It's like, I don't know. This work sounds great, but I don't think I'm ready for the change. Exact words. But I was like, all right, you're not ready. That's okay. You're not ready. But it's right. It's a true fear. But it's no different than the work you're doing, right? Like, you're really bringing people to, like you said, like even before we got on this call, like, people make drastic shifts in their life after doing something like this.
yeah, I mean, it's sort of it's an uncovering process, I suppose. And I mean, it's natural to me that, I'm just sort of saying what I see, but for some people it's probably unusual them saying it and sort of connecting dots too.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. So what's your superpower then?
I think it's my voice. Not I think, I know it's my voice. There's something about my voice that seems to draw people in. And it's also the voice that allows people to just, even me, right? The more I found my voice, it's like when you shine your light, it allows other people to shine their light. So by me finding my voice, it's allowing people around me to find their voice.
No, it makes sense. It's and what's a particularly proud moment for you?
I don't have, I think every day, this is how I live my life now, right? Like, it's more every day I evaluate, how did my day go? What did I like about today? What am I grateful for? What could I have done differently? These are my few questions I go through pretty much every night. And it's a ritual we do even as a family, not about what we could do everything. With my kids, I do this. We do, what are you grateful for? And then what do you love about yourself today? Because I'm trying to, indoctrination is going to happen, right? Like, they're exposed as we live in the city. We're not, like, I'm not living in isolation. They meet a lot of people. I mean, not now, but COVID times, but in general, they're around people, and it's hard not to get indoctrinated with beliefs about what other people think of you. So I started doing this ritual with them where they say one thing that they like about themselves or they love about themselves or what they're proud of. Most of the time they can come up with anything. They're still so young. But I say, like, oh, I saw that you were so kind to your sister. It's not about anything they're doing, but more about who they were being. Or like, oh, I saw that you came and gave your dad a kiss for my younger one. Like, when he was showing affection, like something just who they were being. And that to me, if we can celebrate every moment, right, as a proud moment, there are no mistakes, there are only course corrections. But so many of us beat ourselves up, being so critical. So I don't know if there's any specific proud moment, but I would say at this point where I'm at, I'm very grateful for this journey that has brought me to this place. And there've been so many amazing mentors that have led me to this place.
Do you love yourself and do you value yourself?
Oh, 100% at this point. You know how I know that? And this is a big difference before how I used to live my life. I'll sometimes see myself, a reflection of myself in the mirror, and I'll just have this big smile on my face. I'm like, wow, I'm so happy to see you. It's just, I know it sounds so kooky, but
No, it's great. I love it.
so this is not how I live. Throughout my life, I've been like, you look horrible, you're so blah, blah, blah. Like everything was just critical, being so critical of myself. And I did not love myself at all. And even now it's a journey, right? Like it's this, you peel off one layer, then 5 other layers come up. But at this time, I'm like, no, I love myself just the way I am. I don't want to be different.
And in terms then of, I suppose, heroes or inspirational people in your life, and who stands out for you?
There are many guides. I've had many guides. I mean, there are the non-physical reality guides that I have who were always with me, guiding every step. I'm exactly where I need to be, so they're guiding wherever I'm at. But in terms of people in my human existence right now, there's a shaman I work with, so he's a guide for me. I have my coach, his name is Jim Fortin. I love him. He's been such an inspiration for me. My family is often an inspiration. My husband's amazing. I learned so much even from my kids. They're really good teachers. They teach you how to change. I mean, especially my daughter. She's definitely a button pusher.
They do say kids sort of round the edges. It's like if you think you're going to stand up or have principles, they'll break you down.
Yes. Yeah.
No, it's a beautiful thing to have that, And so, tell me this: what's a bit of a guilty pleasure for you?
Bollywood movies.
Are you a person that sings along? Are you a secret singer?
You could say that. But I like the really mushy, romantic, like there's no violence. It's like so predictable and it's so pink flowery. Yeah, those kinds.
Wow.
Which my husband can't stand, so we never watch movies together.
And that's all part of acceptance. That's fine, just having different movie requirements and things like that. No, that's awesome. And then what about leisure and pleasure? What's your go-to?
I love spending time in nature. So we do a lot of hiking or just being out. And when we could travel, we would travel at least once a year. We would travel, find a new country to go to, even with the kids. Like since they were very little, we've been traveling with them, just exposing them to different cultures and different scenes. There's so much more, right? Like I often think about this, like we live like a fish in like a frog in a pond. All we can see is a little pond, so we think like, oh, this is everything. But there's so much beyond that, and I want to expose my kids to that. I want to keep reminding myself of that. It's very easy to be stuck in that little pond.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about bucket list? What's What's the sort of the goals out there? What's on the list?
Ah, if you'd asked me like 5 years ago, I'd have been like, I want to do this and I want to do that. Now I'm like, I just want to reach as many people as I can. Like as cliched as it sounds, like that's really on my bucket list. And give my kids a really, really good life, thinking differently and not being boxed into all the beliefs.
When you say reaching as many people as you can, I mean, do you see that as in um, sharing a message, or do you see it as in change making, or describe to me how you see that?
Mm. I see that in them waking up.
Okay.
Waking up meaning, I know it's a very loose term that people use the word a lot now. It's more around if they can see who they truly are, feel their full potential, know their full potential, then the ripple effect of that would be so incredible. Like that's what I see. It's not about even about me or having my message. It's not about that. It's about them owning who they truly are and that creating an impact in whatever they do.
No, it's listen. I think it's amazing. Just out of interest, what is your coaching style?
It is very much um, I go with what's in the moment.
Hmm.
So there's definitely, I use a lot of the brain science piece, like the neuropsychology. I just bring that in because it's effective when you do it properly and when you do it well, and not let them get stuck in their stories. But I do a lot of taking them on a journey, internal work. So if and I don't see, one of the reasons I stepped away from therapy was it just felt like everything was about the past, and it keeps them stuck in their identity of the past. And now when it comes up, we still go back to the past, but it's in relationship to the present. It's like, why is this happening now? Like, what is the root of why you are refusing to, like if someone fears rejection, right? Like what is the root of that rejection? And often they'll take me to a past life or even like in utero sometimes, and then we'll just clear that energetically. And then that creates a ripple effect in today's life. And they're no longer holding on to that, whatever that, because we're clearing the energetic imprint.
Interesting, and you've talked about that previously. The difference, I suppose, in from an energy perspective, or between past life and utero. Why would the two be not? I can understand why they'd be separate, but why are those particularly strong standout points?
Because the past life imprint, you might not even be conscious of. Like, for example, that the destitute past life that I have, for in just using them without going into any client stuff,
Yeah.
that has an impact in today's life because I refuse to own my gifts because of what happened back then, but I have no knowledge of that. I
Mm.
don't have any memory of that in that way. So if I don't clear that from an energetic level, because it's just energy, right? Everything leaves an energetic imprint. So if you don't clear that, I'm going to keep holding on to that fear without realizing, why am I fearful? There's no reason to be fearful, but yet I am. It's why like some people have this immense fear of heights and they have no idea why they're fearful of heights. It's probably because something happened and they have no memory of it, conscious memory of it. But in utero, again, like until the age of 7, we're just pure subconscious.
Mm.
So in utero too, like whatever imprints happen, it stays with you sometimes.
It was interesting because there's a Dr. Gabor Mate. I don't know if you've heard it. He's a psychologist, but his theory was that all sort of, sort of all base forms and beliefs actually are formed by the age of 3 and maybe even
Mm.
younger, and which I can kind of see. And, from, from having a 3-year-old as have I've got a 3-year-old, and yeah, there's a lot of opinion, there's a lot of beliefs already built in,
Yeah,
by the age of 7, God only knows what, is going to be running around the house.
right. Yes.
So it's awesome. No, it's tell me any recommendations in regards to books or sort of people to follow and things like that.
Jim Fortin, and I just love him. He's my coach. Books, books. Oh, I always have this long-standing list of books. Um,
Are you a reader? Is that that's your preferred method to read?
No, I'm also a listener. I
Mm.
listen to audiobooks. I used to be a reader, and then after having kids, like my attention span became that of a goldfish or something. I don't know. So now I can only listen, and I'm listening when I'm doing something because that's the best way for me to absorb the information. I have a big list. Some of my favorites, like especially about breaking the rules and this Vishen Lakiani, the Mind Valley guy, Code of the Extraordinary Mind. I think that's the name of the book. There's the Big Leap. Gay Hendricks is another. I love that book too. The um, Four Agreements. Yeah, I also like the Carlos Castaneda books too.
Okay. What sort of books are they?
They are based on shamanistic perspective, the life of Carlos. He writes about his experience apprenticing with a shaman.
Mm,
It's a very
interesting.
interesting book. Yeah.
I love it. There's, I mean, I like sort of hearing what, you know, what's in other people's reading lists. It always, I think, is quite telling, and their sort of go-tos, which I just think, yeah, it's awesome. So, no,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that. So, tell me, I mean, fire in the belly for you. What is your fire in the belly then?
It's to help awaken people. That is my biggest drive right now. It's like help people find themselves.
I love that. That's, yeah, and that's word for word what you said at the start, which shows, for me, shows great alignment. You know, so awesome. So, how can people reach out to you? How can they track you down, find you, follow you?
LinkedIn or Instagram. Podcast. I have a podcast too. It's called Create Your Vibrant Life. That's
Love
my
it.
goal too. Like if we can have a balance in all aspects of your life, right? It'd be so great.
Awesome. Padma, I really appreciate you sharing so much, and it's been fascinating talking to you. Listen, I've had great fun, and you know, you never know where you're going to go on these journeys, and it's always a pleasure. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Pete.